From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down the latest with the Broncos head coaching search. I feel like it's Groundhog Day. Every single day we got something new with the coaching search, and every single day it just seems like a lot of kind of nothing. But I thought a very creative way we could do this is, since the Broncos haven't, at the moment, as we're recording this, haven't laid out who their finalists are. They haven't laid out who their second interview candidates are. I thought it would be a good exercise for us to kind of go through on who we think would be our top three. Not necessarily who the Broncos are looking at, who we think are the top three for our own sake. So my list, and then we can get to your list. My list would be Sean Payton, DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, and finally Dan Quinn. I like all three candidates. And honestly, it's not to knock against the other candidates. Those are just my top three. If I'm giving second round interviews, those are the three guys that I'm going with.
I originally had Jim Harbaugh in there as number one.
Well, I did too, but we had to. I mean, we have to amend that, right?
Right? Yeah, you got to. So you have to scratch that. So I would say that Dan Quinn is probably my top personal guy, followed by. Jim Caldwell, and then maybe DeMeco Ryans. I think Caldwell has some questions, age, health, all that kind of stuff. You kind of have to understand that he's a stopgap, but he's had success everywhere he's gone. I include DeMeco Ryans on that. I'm not thrilled with the idea of another head coach with no experience. That really bothers me, but I do know he was impressive in his interview. And
we'd have to have a conversation about the staff.
We would have to definitely know what that staff would be, and we'd have to have experience on it. So for me, that's something that, I'm definitely okay with the right staff. I'm a little concerned, especially if the Niners go to the Super Bowl, about hiring someone like that, because at that point, all these other vacancies are probably going to be filled, and all the staffs are going to be picked apart. You're getting leftovers at that point, so I'm a little concerned about that possibility. But that would be the third guy on my list.
Right. So, and I think we're pretty close here. I said that if Sean Payton is no longer on there, there's a bunch of information today that we'll get into about Sean Payton and what's going on. But if Sean Payton is no longer on that list, I'd move up Raheem Morris.
I like Raheem Morris a lot.
Be one more that I would add. And again, we're talking about experience. But DeMeco Ryans, man, there's an intriguing factor to his leadership style. There's an intriguing factor to what he's done as a defensive coordinator. I mean, he took the ball. I mean, basically, you saw what job that was already there. It was already one of the more elite defenses before he took the job over, and then he just sort of kept it going, and they've been the number one defense. Not to mention the fact that everybody you talk to, they just overwhelmingly talk about his leadership qualities, which is what you're looking for. And I agree. I think that a lot of people think about it in terms of, okay, that'd be 4 straight head coaching hires that all are without head coaching experience. But the thing about it is you got to find the right guy. And for me, leadership qualities, you're looking for fit more than anything. If it's somebody that has experience, that's awesome. I don't think that it should be a disqualifier, though, if they don't, as long as it's the right person.
Yeah, I think the right person. I don't know about fit per se. I think that you need to find somebody who's going to the players will fit to you. I think you need, at the end of the day, and let's go back a little bit. In 1999, the Philadelphia Eagles started a head coaching search. They just fired Ray Rhodes. They had a brand new owner in Jeff Lurie, and they started a new head coaching search. And they sat down and they looked at every coach over the last 20, 25 years who had been to more than one Super Bowl and couldn't find a single thing that they had in common. They were old, they were young, they were from the offense, defense, conservative, blitzed, aggressive, whatever. Couldn't find anything. And so they looked for personality traits and quirks in every one of those people that maybe they could try to identify going forward. And they found 2 things that really kind of jumped out of them. The guys who won Super Bowls were beloved by their players, and they were kind of obsessive, detail-oriented obsessives that could be a little annoying in that regard. And with that, they sat about their head coaching search, and they hired a guy who had never been a coordinator before in any way, in Andy Reid. And their hires ever since then have been pretty stinking good using that template. They hired Doug Peterson off that template. They hired Nick Sirianni off that template. The only person they hired off that template that did not matter, that didn't match up, was somebody that came from the college game in Chip Kelly. But he fit the template. He just didn't have any NFL experience, and it wound up being a bust in the NFL after looking promising early on.
Well, but his system just doesn't fit NFL because you don't have a 90-man roster.
Right, and there are other things that go into play there. But it looks like they've hit on a formula that works. And for whatever weird reason, nobody else has really kind of glommed onto this. And then I feel like that needs to be the criterion that people filter through. Look, the Eagles have a great process by which they find head coaching leadership that works. And so if it's me, I'm suggesting that probably they need more people need to look at that model. We need to figure out name me the guys who are beloved by their players, first of all. Well, Dan Quinn is definitely one of them. D'Amico Ryans is definitely one of them. Absolutely. You go through all that kind of stuff.
I think Jim Caldwell would be in that category for...
give or take.
Okay.
I would suggest that the people that outstandingly, there's an outpouring of love for them as a coach. I would say that those two guys are the top of the list,
Ryans,
right?
Quinn, yes.
Right. Then you go look at who are the detail-oriented, obsessive, almost annoying detail-oriented person. I would put Jim Caldwell on that list. And I would put Dan Quinn and D'Amico Ryans on that list.
Sean Payton would have to be...
I would say that Sean Payton is not necessarily beloved by his players, but definitely is a detail-oriented
guy.
Person.
Yes.
So I would say that he would be in that list. So I would say, look at, for me, who are the guys with the overlap? Those should be our candidates. That should be where the focus should go. And that's where I landed on Dan Quinn, D'Amico Ryans, and Jim Caldwell. I don't think Caldwell's as loved by his players. There's some guys that find him a little off-putting on some things, but there are people that do love him. And there are people that love Sean Payton. I mean, I'm not trying to say they hate him, but there are people that dislike Sean Payton a lot too. But I would say,
but we've seen that with head coaches.
Right, but I would say that if you look for people that overwhelmingly fit that criterion, that's how I came up with the names that I came up with, and I'm trying to follow the Eagles model on this a little bit and go from there. And I think that's where the search should focus. And I know people get caught up in brand names. Sean Payton is the brand name in this one, but has he really done anything more than any of the other candidates? Not particularly.
Well, again, I'm not going to relitigate Sean Payton, but there is some interesting information out there today about Sean Payton. Well, first of all, Dan Quinn is going to be interviewing with the Arizona Cardinals this week for a second interview. That's exactly right. By the way, Ejiro Evero is also going to be interviewing with a second interview with the Texans, I believe. Broncos still don't have a second interview scheduled. So that's why we're doing this with our top three candidates who we would ask for a second interview. But Sean Payton, all sorts of different little things going out there. First of all, we never heard anything after the Carolina Panthers interview. He has not been lined up for a second interview. Right now, he's scheduled to do one more interview with Arizona, and that's kind of it until we find out otherwise. What do you make of some of the latest media reports surrounding Sean Payton?
I would say that most of the pro-Sean Payton leaks are coming directly from Sean Payton. And you could kind of tell by what exactly is said in those leaks. I would say there's a bit of a dueling leaks right now kind of thing as Denver appears to be backing away from Sean Payton and appears to be pivoting to a different direction or focusing in a different area. However you want to term all that. That doesn't mean that Sean Payton is out, but I would suggest that the Broncos organization is focused in a different direction at this time.
But I think at this point you have to, right? I mean, there's a lot of games being played, and if you're on social media for any amount of time, you can see that there are a lot of games being played. There's a lot of leaks, and most of it is a lot of hedges, as in, hey, if this thing drags on, Sean Payton's just going to go back to TV. Here's the cost of doing business kind of thing as far as what the Saints are looking for. But if he doesn't like, if the sides don't like it, guess what? He's going to go back to TV. It just sort of feels like we keep seeing that over and over and over again. It could mean nothing, or it could mean something's being played out in the media. And once again, I think you have to sort of tie back to what does this ownership group look like and how much experience do they have with these kinds of games? And that the fact remains that in the business world, you don't get away with this kind of stuff. I think that you have to frame this in maybe football people would understand this a little bit more, but there might be a certain point that this ownership group, at their first time doing this, they might say, okay, we can only do this for so long. We got to consider other options.
I think so. And I think if you're a CEO coming from the business world, you're used to everybody wanting the job that you're offering. Nobody else has any leverage. You have the job, they have the want, and that's it. They're competing against other people. It's a little bit different if somebody, granted, you could have other businesses competing for somebody's services, but it's a little bit different in the corporate world than it is in the NFL world. And I've been reporting from the get-go. I wasn't sure that Sean Payton really wanted this job, that maybe he wanted some of the LA jobs and that, those kinds of things. And I stand by that reporting. That's what he was telling people. I stand by that. And I think that you're going to start to get to dueling leaks of, the Cowherds of the world will start saying that maybe Sean Payton doesn't want the Broncos. The Broncos will pivot their direction elsewhere and make it seem like they don't want Sean Payton. And you'll get this dueling leaks thing. Could they circle back around to it? Maybe. But I firmly believe the Broncos' focus is elsewhere right now.
Yeah. Well, but we also know guys like Sean Payton, guys like Jim Harbaugh, they want to be wanted and they want to feel loved. And there's a certain amount of, okay, you're either going all in on me or I'm going to go look in other directions. And I think the fact that we are sitting here at a point where you and I thought we might be talking about a brand new head coach hired, the fact that we're sitting here talking about they don't have any second interviews scheduled with any of these guys, specifically Sean Payton, makes me wonder at some point, like, hey, if this was really the guy, and you really wanted to put all your eggs in that basket, I think we would already have seen some of that momentum. And the fact that we had the early report saying that he was going to be here, and then that got immediately kind of, table that makes me feel as though your report earlier today on at Allbright NFL on Twitter saying, hey, you think that they might be going in a little bit of a different direction, that ties in with the way that this thing's all been swinging.
Yeah, there was always a large possibility that Sean Payton would go back to television. I reported that, I believe, about a week ago, that there was a growing sense that if a job didn't open up that he wanted, that, going back to television was his primary option, and I still maintain that. I don't think he's going to take the Carolina or Houston Texans job. I sincerely don't. Indianapolis hasn't even asked about an interview. So that leaves Arizona. There is a tie there. Monty Austin-Ford, of course, comes from the Parcells side of things. Sean Payton comes from the Parcells side of things. Neither one of them work together, but there is a tie there. So I don't know. I don't know Arizona's actual level of interest. My gut says they go with a Brian Flores, Dan Quinn, John Gannon, somebody like that. A defensive coach, but
Vance Joseph is in the mix.
Vance is technically in the mix, but yes, I think they go with a defensive coach probably, and hope that and have that person bring in an offensive coordinator that'll work with something that Kyler Murray wants. I would not be surprised to see somebody reach out and try to get Todd Monken from Georgia as their offensive coordinator in the NFL. Whether Dan Quinn could possibly go that route, whether that would be here in Denver, whether that would be in Arizona, whether that be in Indy where he's had interviews, and have Brian Schottenheimer on the staff to work with the quarterbacks. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those things.
All right, the last thing I want to ask you is about Dan Quinn going for the second interview down in Arizona. And if the Broncos view him, because it's almost like history repeating, because Nathaniel Hackett was in the similar situation. He was in for a second interview. He was getting ready to go for a second interview in Jacksonville. All of a sudden, the Broncos were like, whoa, let's hire you. If Dan Quinn is the backup plan, let's just for argument's sake say he's in your finalists, and now you have a feeling that maybe Sean Payton isn't available. How do you act here? Like if you're this ownership, how do you act about this?
Well, I don't think you cut in front of Arizona on a second interview for Dan Quinn. I think if Arizona snaps Dan Quinn from you, then they snap Dan Quinn from you. I think if you're the Broncos, you're looking at this, and again, I'm jumping ahead a little here. I think if you're the Broncos,
I'm asking you to.
I know, and I think so I want to be careful in saying this because I don't want somebody to cut this up as a report. I think if you're the Denver Broncos right now, and this is the hypothetical that you are into Quinn and Ryans, I think you let the Quinn interview happen on its own with Arizona and see what happens. And then you say, okay, we're going to bring Dan Quinn in. We'd like to schedule something with DeMeco Ryans. And that's how you protect yourself. You schedule the Dan Quinn interview first, and you can't interview Ryans yet. So you say, we'd like to schedule something later. You have the interview with Dan Quinn. You bring him in here, and you say, is this the guy? If he's the guy, then we don't need the interview with DeMeco Ryans. If he's not, then we let DeMeco Ryans know that, hey, we're waiting on you, and we're willing to battle with the Houston Texans to get you. The problem is that I think the Houston job is better for DeMeco Ryans than the Denver Broncos job. And I know people are going to say that's blasphemy, but you're talking about a guy who's a hero
I don't think
in
you're
Houston,
wrong. Yeah.
Who played for them, right. Was a hero down there in Houston, would have carte blanche to build that team and the draft picks to build that team the way that he wants. And he would be a young head coach, not dealing with an established veteran quarterback and have that head-to-head that he might have to have. So I would suggest that, in looking at this situation that, as much as the fan base was pivoting to literally anyone but Dan Quinn, that maybe you need to take a step back and identify, okay, what do each of these guys bring to the table? What are we competing with here to make this work? Because the Denver Broncos job, as much as you and I think that this is a great job, and I do think it's a great job, might not be as desirable to some people based on their other options.
The backwards hat paid off.
Backwards hat brigade.
All right. That's the latest on the Broncos head coaching search. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Denver's going to win it! You can stand up and salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.